Fire, you listen to me. I don't care what you do once this thing's over with. You can lay down and die and rot in the street for years. Fans of Bonanza have adored host Cartwright the Gentle Giant, who brought warmth and humor to the screen. But behind the scenes, Dan Blocker the man, who embodied Hose, had a story full of surprising twists and untold secrets. Now at 66, one of his sons has come forward to confirm a long-suspected truth about his father, a revelation that could change everything fans thought they knew. But before we get into these revelations, it's essential to understand the early events that led his son to unveil these long-hidden secrets. The 14 PB star is born Lil Joe may have won hearts with his charm and good looks, but it was host Cartwright the Gentle Giant who truly stole our affection with his humble nature, boundless innocence, and a heart as pure as gold. Hose became more than a character. He became a beloved figure embodying warmth and strength, in equal measure born as Bobby Dan Davis Blocker on December 10th, 1928 in Diab, Texas. Dan arrived in this world with a bang, weighing in at a whopping 14 pounds. This record-breaking birth was just the beginning of a larger-than-life story. Growing up in the small town of Odin, Texas, Dan spent his early years helping out in the family grocery store, where he carried bags for customers and soaked up the small-town values that shaped his kind and grounded spirit. By age 10, Dan was already taking on jobs side by side with grown men, hauling grain and working construction. His strength was remarkable, and his neighbors gave him the fitting nickname, the Big Gun. By 12, he had already reached 6 feet in height and tipped the scales at 200 pounds. Some local toughs even tried challenging him, but Dan never lost a fight. After high school, Dan attended Texas Military Institute, where he excelled on the football field. His athletic ability earned him a football scholarship to Seoul State University. By then, he was an imposing 64 and 275 pounds. A presence hard to ignore. It was around this time that the spark of a new dream was ignited, though he didn't know it just yet, when his college drama club needed a stagehand to move heavy props. They called on Dan, whose strength made him the obvious choice. But what started as a simple favor led to his first small role in production of Arsenic and Old Lace. That first taste of acting captivated him. Dan felt the thrill of the stage and quickly shifted his focus, changing his major from English to theater. Though he had offers to play professional football, Dan chose instead to follow his heart. His dreams of acting eventually led him to New York City, where he pursued a career on Broadway. In time, his dedication and talent landed him a role in a production of King Lear, marking a major step in his journey toward Hollywood. But as life would have a new and unexpected twist, was just around the corner. Surviving Pork Chop Hill's brutality after college, Dan Blocker found himself trading textbooks for military fatigues as he joined the U.S. Army, ready to serve his country. But this was no easy transition. Standing at over 6 feet 3 inches in and weighing around 300 pounds, Blocker was a giant of a man, and his sheer size created unique challenges for the Army. It took a full month just to find boots that could fit his massive feet. Once outfitted, Blocker soon found himself far from home in the thick of Korean War. By Christmas of 1951, he was stationed on the front lines near Cheon, North Korea, as part of the 179th Infantry Regiment. As a combat infantry sergeant, Blocker's strength and resilience made him a force to be reckoned with. Day after day, he and his fellow soldiers faced brutal battles, enduring the biting cold, sleepless nights, and the unrelenting threat of enemy fire. For nearly 7 months, Blocker trudged through trench warfare, the echoes of explosions filling the air as he led his men through some of the most intense fighting the war had to offer. One night, in the midst of chaos and gunfire, Blocker spotted one of his comrades in desperate need, pinned down and unable to move. Without hesitation, he charged forward, braving the firestorm to pull his fellow soldier to safety. It was an act of courage that would leave him wounded, but earned him a Purple Heart, a symbol of bravery that he wore with quiet pride. The fierce skirmishes on Pork Chop Hill were some of the hardest of Korean War, a battleground where survival itself felt like a victory. Here, Blocker and his regiment fought on the front lines, defending every inch of land in a place where each hill and valley came at a high price. It was grueling work, and after months of continuous combat, Blocker was finally evacuated, his body battered, but spirit unbroken, sent to a hospital to heal from the scars of battle. When he eventually returned home, Dan Blocker carried with him the memories of war's harsh realities. Though he had fought with honor, the experience had changed him. He became an outspoken critic of war, especially military interventions that relied on force. Having witnessed the destructive power of violence firsthand, he became a passionate advocate for peace, condemning the horrors of war, and in particular the devastating use of napalm. How Dan Blocker found fame. When Dan Blocker returned home from the Korean War, he was ready to leave the battlefield behind and focus on building a life filled with family and purpose. He married his college sweetheart, Dolphia Parker, and together they would raise 4 children, creating a warm and loving family life that grounded him after the chaos of war. Though acting wasn't originally part of his plan's life, had a surprising twist in store for the towering Texan in pursuit of his doctorate. Blocker moved to California and enrolled at UCLA. It wasn't long before his massive frame and unmistakable Southern charm caught the eye of Hollywood casting agents at the time Westerns ruled. Television and Blocker seemed tailor-made for the genre. His imposing presence and rugged good looks made him an ideal fit for the rough-and-tumble roles Western demanded, and soon he was being offered small parts in popular shows. His journey began with bit roles in Western series like Gunsmoke and Colt Point 45, where he brought an unmistakable warmth and humor to each character he played throughout the 1950s. Blocker steadily built his resume, appearing in well-known shows such as A Rifleman Have Gun Will, Travel, and Maverick. Though he occasionally dabbled in film, it was television that truly captured his heart. In 1957, he got his first major break, landing a significant role in The Restless Gun. His performance resonated with audiences and opened doors to even more opportunities. Soon after, he took on a recurring role of Tiny Boing, a lovable and goofy ranch hand in Cimarron City. This character allowed him to showcase his natural comedic timing and hinted at the charisma that would make him a household name. It wasn't long before Blocker's big break finally arrived. He landed the role of host Cartwright on Bonanza, a part that would cement his place in television history and catapult him to stardom. Dan Blocker's defining Bonanza role. Dan Blocker's life took a huge turn when he landed the role of host Cartwright in the hit television series Bonanza. This part would not only change his career, but make him a household name across America. As host, the warm-hearted and towering son of the Cartwright family, Dan became a fixture in living rooms coast to coast. Hose was a gentle giant, a character who might not have been the sharpest of the Cartwright clan, but more than made up for it with his big heart and genuine kindness. Audiences, especially children, quickly fell in love with Haas's straightforward charm and his unshakable loyalty to those he cared about. For Dan, Hose was more than just a character. He was a way to express his own beliefs and values, inspired by the words of Stephen Grett, an 18th century Quaker missionary who urged people to do all the good you can. Dan brought this philosophy to life through Hose. It was this underlying sense of justice and compassion, so natural to Dan himself, that made Haas's kindness feel real and earned him a special place in the hearts of viewers. Though Hose was portrayed as simple and innocent, Dan himself was an intelligent and thoughtful man. He held a master's degree in theater and had a deep appreciation for literature and philosophy. His portrayal of Hose balanced tenderness with a fierce protective instinct, a quality that echoed his own life as a decorated Korean War veteran who knew both the cost of conflict and the value of peace. Dan's imposing frame certainly made him a perfect fit for the role of Hose, but it was his gentle nature that truly brought the character to life. Just 2 years into his acting career, Dan became part of one of television's most iconic families behind the scenes. He formed a close friendship with his co-stars Lauren Green and Michael Land, and the 3 men shared a bond that went beyond acting. Dan even served as best man at Michael Landon's wedding to Lynn Noah, testament to the deep connection they shared. Though Bonanza kept him busy, Dan occasionally ventured into film, appearing alongside Frank Sinatra in movies like Come Blow Your Horn and Lady in Cement. Despite his growing fame, he never forgot his roots in the small town of O'Donnell, Texas. The people back home were immensely proud of a quiet, thoughtful boy who had grown into a television star, bringing joy to millions. Why Dan Blocker left Hollywood. Dan Blocker's portrayal of host Cartwright on Bonanza launched him into stardom. Though fame was never something he actively sought, with his gentle nature and imposing frame, he became a beloved figure on American television. Yet he was ambivalent about the spotlight that came with his success. Acting was his passion, but the attention that followed him everywhere was something he struggled to embrace. He would have preferred to focus on his craft quietly, yet his natural talent and the love of his fans made anonymity impossible. As much as Dan appreciated his fans, he found the loss of privacy overwhelming. His towering presence made him easy to recognize, and even a simple family outing could turn into chaos as fans eagerly crowded around him. On one occasion, a vacation to the Yucatan intended as a quiet escape quickly became a public spectacle, as locals immediately recognized him, calling out to host Cartwright wherever he went. Unlike many actors, Blocker had little desire to remain in the limelight. In 1970, he and his family embarked on a trip to Switzerland, inspired by the breathtaking beauty of the Swiss Lake country that he had read about in National Geographic. They were captivated by the serene landscapes around Lakes Calmmeyer and Lugano, and for a block of the idyllic scenery, and the chance to lead a quieter life felt like a dream come true to family, soon decided to make Switzerland their new home here. They found not only tranquility, but also a high-quality international education for their children who thrived in their new surroundings. Rumors circulated about Blocker's motivations for moving abroad. Some speculated he was facing financial difficulties, but he dismissed these claims, clarifying that Bonanza had made him quite wealthy. His decision had nothing to do with money. Rather, he yearned for a life away from the pressures of fame. In Switzerland, Bonanza aired in German, creating a language barrier that allowed him to enjoy his surroundings without being constantly recognized. The Swiss countryside offered Dan the peace he had longed for. Despite his success, he remained humble and grounded, acutely aware of the privileges his career afforded him. He often expressed concern for those who struggled, especially underpaid teachers whom he admired deeply. With a reflective perspective on his own career, he even acknowledged a sense of irony about his wealth, remarking, "Let's face it, I sold out for money," though he occasionally entertained the idea of returning to teaching. His fame as host Cartwright made it difficult to step back into a quieter, simpler life. Dan Blocker's fight against racism. In the 1960s, the cast and crew Bonanza often traveled to different locations for filming. One trip took them to the southern United States, a region still deeply entangled in the painful struggle with racial segregation. Though the civil rights movement was pushing for change, prejudice remained strong, and many hotels, restaurants, and theaters refused to serve African Americans. During one of these trips, the Bonanza team arrived at a hotel only to be told that their African American members would not be allowed to stay due to the establishment's discriminatory policies. The entire crew was stunned and outraged by this blatant act of injustice, and Dan Blocker, known for his kind spirit, stepped forward with an iron resolve. Without hesitation, he announced that if the hotel refused to accommodate everyone, then no one from the cast and crew would stay there. Dan's words weren't just a threat, they were a promise. In that moment, he showed that his sense of fairness wasn't limited to roles he played on screen. It was part of who he was. Dan Blocker's commitment to justice was as towering as his physical presence. Beneath his gentle demeanor lay a deep-rooted hatred for any form of bullying or oppression. In a 1964 interview, he put it simply, "I hate a bully worse than anything. I'm a big man. I don't like fights. But if I see a 180 pounds guy beating on a 130 pounds guy, you can damn bet you I'll take care of the big guy." In a hurry, Dan understood the power of his own size and strength, but he saw it as a responsibility, a gift meant to protect others, not to intimidate. His courageous stand against racial discrimination during his time on Bonanza speaks volumes about his character. By refusing to accept injustice, he demonstrated how one person's actions can challenge the status quo. Inside Dan Blocker's food obsession, Dan Blocker wasn't just known for his towering frame and kind-hearted nature. He was also famous for his enormous appetite, which was as outsized as his personality. Those who knew him couldn't help but marvel at the sheer volume of food he could put away. He'd start each morning with a feast that would make most people's heads spin: a dozen eggs, 2 loaves of bread, and 2 of milk, just to get the day started. As the hours rolled on, he'd pile his plate high with meat, potatoes, and more bread, polishing off servings that left others stunned. Dan's appetite was in every way legendary, true to his text and roots. Dan had a soft spot for hearty down-home meals. One of his favorite indulgences was a whole roasted ham, which he could easily devour all on his own. He wasn't one for fruits and vegetables, but he had a notorious sweet tooth, especially when it came to cakes, pies, and cookies. His love for a good filling meal even extended into his business ventures. Dan became a co-owner of the Ponderosa Steakhouse chain, a nod to the famous Cartwright family ranch on Bonanza. The restaurant served exactly the kind of generous, satisfying fare that Dan himself loved, and as a co-owner, he had the perk of dining for free at any Ponderosa location. But even as he relished these perks, Dan knew that keeping up